So basically, what we're talking about is Omega 3. And I'm sure you've all heard of it, and I don't know what everyone's experience level is with it. But we're going to talk about kind of what makes it work, what technologies it's using, and then mainly how to use its important features. And the biggest one, of course, is their layout builder with the grid system. And it has responsive features everyone knows about. We're going to talk about why they work, maybe why they don't, the kind of tricks that you can do to make them work better. And Omega has a special structure with the CSS. And it's a little strange at first, but once you get a handle on it, it's good. And I'll show you some tricks using a certain text editor to be able to manage all that. All right, let's move on. So what is Omega 3? It's sort of like Legos. It's building blocks. You have a grid. The grid is a certain width, and then you can put your regions in there. And you choose how wide you want them to be, and it adapts if you make it smaller or larger. But mainly, Omega started just as a 960 grid theme. It was 960 pixels wide, and you could build your regions and everything. And they sort of added all the responsive stuff later. And so what they do is,
you keep going.
Okay. When you're below 740 pixels by default, the grid sort of goes away and everything stacks on top of each other, like like you see on mobile phones. And then as soon as you get up to a certain point, the grid pops in and everything is the way that you built it in your layout builder. And you can add more widths. Often it takes some custom files, and it's sort of, once you start having to customize Omega to that level, in my view, you're sort of better off using something else, because Omega has sensible defaults and it will do nice things for you right out of the box. So, okay, so I could bring up a couple websites that are using Omega, because I want to show you that Omega has a certain look to it most of the time. Generally, people use a fluid mobile width and then a fixed narrow and then a fixed sort of 960 pixel grid. And a lot of people don't use the wide view because it's sort of difficult to make things look good in that wide view. Anyway, so Omega is, just has continued to rise in popularity when it hit a couple of years ago. It just hit 60,000 sites. And the fellow who created it, sleeps well at night knowing that 60,000 people or websites are existing with his theme more than anyone else's. And here's this guy. I saw an old presentation he made about Omega, and he was saying that he liked like 5 different themes that he was starting projects with, and he liked different elements of each one. And so what he did was he just went to, it's open source. He went to the source and found these pieces that he wanted and put it together and sort of made this ultimate theme that he could use. And so, there's features like your adaptive grids and different column layouts and everything, customization of zones and regions. The main thing in Omega is that you get to build your layout exactly how you want it. You can get your design comp or whatever from your design people, and then you can say, okay, well, I need a region here, region there, and very quickly you can kind of build it out. So the name of the session is Use It, Don't Get Used to It, and that's because it works, and for certain websites, it'll make your clients totally happy. But it's really not the future. The whole responsive side of it was sort of an afterthought, and it's miraculous how far they were able to bring it. But there are some really cool things coming down the line that are superior, and I'm going to show you some of that. So Omega's on HTML5. You don't really have to think much about that. It's just there. Like, one of the great things in Drupal is you don't really have to use the HTML much. And but it gives you the advantage of being able to do all the HTML5 stuff, like audio and video and good semantics and everything. And there's more modules in Drupal you can use with HTML5, like HTML5 tools, fences, and semantic blocks. HTML5 tools really cuts down the markup. Fences cuts down all the crazy markup that Drupal puts around fields. And semantic blocks lets you decide what the content is of a block. You say, it's a section or a side or whatever it is, you can decide. So the 960 grid system is pretty famous. 960 is this magic number that's divisible by like every number you can imagine. And so it's very flexible in how you can position things in a grid. And a lot of sites use it. Obviously, Drupal.org uses it, and Omega is based around it. So using Omega, you're going to want a certain suite of modules to really get the full experience. You want the Omega 3 theme. You want the Omega tools, which makes your sub-themes automatically. And Delta and Contacts, which lets you make multiple layouts and have them apply to different parts of the site. And that's like the really powerful thing in there. So with Omega, you want to always work from the sub-theme. And of course, that Omega tool will make it for you super fast. And I have a fresh install. All right, so this is, again, a fresh install. I installed the admin toolbar because, well, the one that comes with Drupal is bogus, and this one's awesome. So I guess at this point, I just want to show you everything you do in Omega. Pretty much, you go to your appearance settings, and then this is my sub-theme that I made. And then in here is where pretty much all the magic happens. So your grid settings, you can enable and disable the responsive grid. And I've had it where a customer wants Omega, but they're not ready to do a responsive. You can build it in Omega and turn all the responsive stuff off. And honestly, Omega's best feature is not the responsive part. So it's totally fine to not do responsive, except for the fact that everyone wants responsive now, so we're going to make it work. You can change when the basically in Omega, there's certain breakpoints where here the grid goes away, here it comes in at narrow, and here it is at normal, and there's also the wide, but this is not high enough resolution to go there. And you can change those up, but they're really good defaults because if you change them, then you're going to be covering up part of the website before it breaks. And there's one of the problems with Omega, which is now there's all this white space on the side. Yeah, so these are all your options with Omega. There's all sorts of cool stuff you can do. You can turn off certain page elements. You can turn off all these different CSS files. You can just have a completely clear system with no CSS, because sometimes like the Drupal system CSS has weird padding and stuff like that when you're trying to position things. Like you don't even know where these styles are coming from. So in here you can turn on and off this debugging blocks and everything. But the main deal you use in here is this zone and region configuration guy, and I want to tell you a bit more about that before diving into it. So if we go back to these slides, we're going to talk about the building layouts with Omega, and this is really where the action is and what it's all about. So you have this header, content, and footer section, and they're just there. You can't really change them, but basically every website has those, so you just remember that they're there. And then in those sections, you put your zones. Zones come with sensible names by default, but you can name them anything you want. And then you put your regions in the zones, and then the regions hold your content. So most of the time you're working in regions, but you have to consider zones so that you can move around your regions sort of above and below each other. And there's ways that you can, looks like the bottom's cutting off. Anyway, just bring this up a little bit. All right. So, and if you look at it in HTML, it's, they're just nested like that. I took out all these classes so that you can kind of get an idea of what it looks like. But generally, everything's going to go in these regions. So I had an idea that we would look at Drupal.org and see how you would turn Drupal.org into an Omega site. And obviously you have your header, content, and footer section. Okay, that's easy enough. And then you want to be able to conceptualize these into zones and regions. So if your design team or you came up with a design that looked like this, you'd want to say, okay, well, here's my header, and I want to break it up. Here's the menu zone. Here's header zone, user zone, because Drupal puts your user information here. So I figured that we would use this layout builder and actually build it. So if we go back to here and we say, okay, here's our header section. We have user, branding, menu, and header. What we wanted was menu, header, and user. So we're going to take the menu, you go into this configuration, and then there's a weight. And we're going to take it up to the top, just put it at 0. Then we want the header zone, configuration, put it up to number 1. So it's sort of like abstract the way you work on this. You kind of have to keep it all in your head and then just kind of go in there and do it and then see if it worked right. So then you go down to the bottom, save configuration, and then we can refresh this and we can see, well actually we need to look at the regions now. So we have our menu zone, and what region is it? Okay, there's a menu region in there. That's perfect because that's exactly what we needed. Let's look at the next one. Header zone, regions. Header first, header second. That's actually exactly what we needed. See, here's a header first, header second. Perfect. See, it has these kind of like defaults out of the box that seem to work a lot of the time. And then we have the branding zone, which we don't need this. We're not going to let Omega tell us that that we are branding there. So you say, it's not in the header content or footer section. You just say none, and then it goes away. In the user zone, we need to make sure that we just have one bar straight across because we don't need 2 of them. So let's take the user bar second and say that we don't want it anymore. User bar first, we want to make sure that it's going the full 12 columns. So hopefully that makes sense. And this is, again, it's sort of like hands-off. I was working on this once and my wife was like, can't you just move them around right here? I'm like, that would be nice. And I think they were working on some kind of like jQuery editor or something like that could do that, but I don't think it ever came to fruition. So now we have that menu, header first, header second, and user bar first. So we've pretty much blocked out our header area, although if you notice on the Drupal site, this is not exactly down the middle. This is like more like 7 and 5. So go back into here, header zone, regions, and then you have to set the number of columns for each one. So we're going to do 7 columns on this and 5 on this one. And all went according to plan. There it is. So now, we'd be able to start putting in the content to these blocks. And of course, any region that you have, if you go to your blocks, it's there. So we were just working with that menu block, and we were working with the user block. I don't know why it's not here. Let me do a cache clear. Let's try that again. Yeah, we were looking at blocks. I don't know why I'm not saying user. User, am I blind or something? Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay, if I don't see something, you can tell me. There it is. User bar first and user bar second. You could just, if you want, you could put something in there. User bar first is what we were using, and then back over here, there should be the powered by Drupal in the user bar first. But what's that? Oh, yeah. Well, it doesn't seem to be there, but I promise it normally works. This Drupal install, honestly, I was like working on it, and then I was like rolling back the database and stuff like that, so it might be a little like quirky at times. But now I'm like, I don't know. Let me see. Yeah, that's a good question. So I went to blocks, and then I stuck the user. Oh, I put in the user bar second. All right, come on, you guys can help me out on this. There it is, user bar first. So I mean, you just. Our header is blocked out now. So let's move on. Let's look at the footer, which looks to be a bit trickier. Because it looks like it has 5 of these regions straight across. And 5 doesn't really go, if you think about Omega and the grid system, you have 12, 16, or 24 columns, and 5 doesn't go into any of those very well. So you could build like a custom grid. That's sort of a big pain. So usually you can come up with some kind of workaround, and I'll show you what my idea was. So I wanted to add, in this footer zone, I'm going to keep the footer second, because if you look here, there's still this down below it. Let's keep that down there. But let's remove the footer first, and then I want to show you how you can add your own zones and regions. This is important. You don't have to do it. You can just wrangle the ones that are there, but you're going to want to know how to do it at some point. So I'm using this thing called Alfred, which is really awesome. You can just find files and stuff really quickly. So in your subtheme, you have this subtheme or .info file, whatever your subtheme is. And it looks all crazy and everything, but it's just a list of your regions and stuff. And I had kind of made these already because I wanted to add 5 footer regions. And if you look, this is Sublime Text too. It's really awesome. You can make a giant deal and then just like do like that. And like, it's wild. So this is Sublime Text 2. It is just a really awesome text editor. So you save your .info file, you go back to Omega, and you flush the caches. And then it'll rebuild this theme registry. And if all goes according to plan, if you go back to your zone and region configuration, you will see that you have a bunch of new stuff. Oh, there they all are. Look, footer, all these footer things. We just added some text into that .info file. All of a sudden, we have these zones and regions that we can work with. So this one's a little trickier. What I want to do is, first I want to make sure what the weight is on this region, the footer second. This is weight 2. I'm going to make that higher. I want all the other ones below it. And this is just going to sort of be like busy work. I'm going to put this in the footer. I'm going to make it 5 columns. And it's going to have weight 1, sure. Footer 2. Oops. Footer 5. And weight 2. Now this one's a little trickier. What I'm going to do is, to get that one centered right in the middle, I'm going to do something pretty tricky, I guess. I'm going to make this one 4 columns, and you'll see why that works in a sec. And this one's going to be 3. We're almost there. So again, you kind of just have to like hold everything in your head and just do these one at a time. And then you hit save, and then you just hope that it all works. Footer 5, weight 5. That should do it. Let's see if that worked. It's using some CSS that I was messing with. I thought that I commented that stuff out. Let me just, yeah, wait, this isn't it. Here it is. Yeah, pretty sure that I commented this stuff out. Why is it coming up? Oh, I made a huge mistake. Let me show you. Of course, it's not, this is kind of what happens with Omega. It's like, you're like, why isn't it working exactly right? What I didn't do was, I didn't make it 24 columns. So that's the way to do it. I need to go back to this footer zone, and the configuration, I need to make sure that it's not 12 columns. See, I added all those columns, and it was all over the place because it didn't add up. I was adding up 24 to 12, and so they're not the way I wanted them to be. So now, they should be totally fine. There they are. So if you notice, footer 3 is like exactly centered over this one. It's just a little bit punier than the other ones. You could do it on the last one, but it wouldn't like work very well. So probably a custom grid would be best for this, but that would be kind of a big pain to do. And you could just like make sure that this fits in there or whatever. So that is how you work with these zones and regions. We built a header to be able to make Drupal.org basically. We built this footer. Oh, the footer second is not wide enough because we changed the number of columns, and so it was 12 columns, which was the full thing, but now it's not the full width anymore. So we need to change it to 24. So again, this is a layout builder, and sometimes you don't have to change anything because it's like exactly right. So there it is. Now, the next really powerful thing that you want to know is how to use Delta. And the way you do that is you have the module installed called Delta. And what that does, it lets us have other layouts. Like, this is not going to work for the front page. This home page, there is no content section. There's this preface section, which actually lines up exactly with what we already have, preface first, second, third. We can do that. But then this is not a sidebar or anything like that. So I want to take out the whole content and sidebar area, this whole area, and just put in something new. But you don't want to do that on your main Drupal settings because you can get locked out of Drupal if you like take out your content section. So it's honestly a little bit risky. But what we're going to do is we're going to go to Delta. We're going to make a new Delta, and we're just going to call it home page or something like that. We're going to make sure that the theme is off of Omega 3 demo, and then you save, and then it's already ready. And then when you go to configure your Delta, it looks just like your theme configuration, but you're not in your theme anymore. You're in Delta. It's like a copy of your theme. So, and the way you get that to work is you go to context, and in context you add a new context, and you say, hey, if the path is front, take this reaction, Delta homepage, like boom, like it's that easy. So now the homepage is going to be loading up our Delta. So now if we go to our Delta now instead of the regular appearance, and we configure it, now we can go in here and let's take out this content zone and also the PostScript zone. We're not going to need that. And I'm just going to make sure that I'm in the Delta, otherwise I'm in big trouble. And if we go to our home page there, now it's not there anymore. But if I go to another page on the site, I don't know what else there is, a user page or something, there it is again, the sidebar and content area and everything. So now our Delta is always going to be working on our home page. So let's go into there and let's configure it. What I want to do is add some different blocks there, or zones and regions. So right now we have that preface zone, which is good, and we're going to look at it. The weight is 1. I'm going to make it a little lower just to make sure that it stays on top. And I made these other ones. They're actually a little bit confusing. One I called the front stats zone, and I'm going to put that in the content section, and I'm going to give it the weight 1. And then this front content zone, I'm also going to put in content and just give it the weight 2. I'm just going to save that, make sure I have my zones in the right place first. Okay, yeah, preface, front stats, front content. So now I just take the front stats. Okay, I got this now. And then I put it into front stats. And I'm going to make it the full width, 12 columns. And then I want to take the front map, which on Drupal.org is right here. And this one looks like it's straight down the center. And I'm going to, again, put that into front content, I guess, and make that one 6 columns. I'll just put the weight a little lower. And then the tabs I want on the right. So I'm going to put this in the right zone, front stats. Yeah, that's right. No, front content, okay. And then I make that one 6 columns. And then that should do it. Let's see if that works. So if we go back to our home page, there, front stats, front map, front tabs. There it is. So it's the same. We have recreated the layout of the Drupal.org homepage. Of course, there's no content in here, but this is the starting point if they're gonna do it. So here it is. Let's be proud. Let's see what's next. I mean, is this like easy to follow? Okay, good. Yeah, it's awesome. One trick with Delta, okay, there's 2 types of Delta. There's an override and a preserve mode. You can, when you make the Delta, if you choose override, it overrides every setting from your main appearance settings. And but if you do preserve mode, it'll only keep what you change. And if you go back and change something in your main settings, then once you do a theme refresh, it will come into your Delta. So it's always best to do preserve modes, otherwise it can be a maintenance nightmare. Okay, so we've got that. So I made a little summary here. Basically, you want to plan your attack. You map it out, block it out, whatever. There's certain tools that you can use. I use this little tool called Gluey. It's like $4 in the Apple Store. You choose, you choose something like this, and then you can just just quickly you can like block it out and stuff like that and be like, okay, I'm going to put this here, here, like that sort of thing. It's useful. All right. Oops. Where's my slides? Okay. So, okay, we learned how to make new zones and regions. You just go to your .info file. You don't have to do that, but I think it's much better to do that because then you're not just sticking something into user bar first because it's there. It's like it's relevant, and someone else will be able to figure out what it is. And you can use custom grids. I've messed with them once. Like they're a huge pain. So maybe I'm just not good enough, but I wouldn't recommend it. Of course, delta and context for unlimited layouts. And that's the layout builder. You don't have to do responsive, and this is much more power than most themes have. Most themes you go in there's a few options or something. This is like a whole like application like in here. And I know the UI is a little weird, but you don't have to spend that much time in it. It's like you go in there, you take care of it, and then you're good. So next would be the dealing with the CSS. They have a very different approach than most for responsive stuff, which is basically, since it's all based around this grid, how do you make it responsive? Well, you squeeze it, you expand it, and you remove it. And we've looked at that. When you're in the mobile view, all these regions are 100%. So you see header first, header second. As soon as you go to here, everything is stacked. And technically, you could use some media queries within this view to move things around, because this is a big way to go without really being able to change anything. So, okay. So you have narrow, normal, and there is wide. Narrow is difficult, and a lot of sites, I feel like have trouble with that narrow view, because sometimes it's like if you have a site with two sidebars in the narrow view, they get so small. Like these little footer deals right here are like super small now if you try to put anything into them. So there's ways around that, but not really like great ones. So let's keep moving forward because I really want to show you a lot of cool stuff. All right, so the way it works in Omega is you get 5 CSS files. This global one applies to everything in the site, and then this alpha default applies to anything with a grid. And then these are specific for the width of the grid. So you can look at it here. In the narrow view, it's taking all the CSS from all 3 of these. In the normal view, it's taking the CSS from all of these. And unless you overwrite something, it's going to pass it on to the next view. And I can show you how that works. So basically, one good use of that is in your global CSS, you can have something like, well, I guess I don't really have anything useful right here right now. Let's say you have Arial or something, and then in this alpha default, you have Open Sans, which will then download a font face font or whatever. That way, you save people on a mobile from downloading a whole extra font face if it's not that necessary to your content or to your appearance. And really the way that I found that works is that you try to name as many of these as you can in a kind of a low CSS file, like the alpha default or the global, and then in the higher ones, you just kind of like, you just touch it up. It's like, okay, you can't even see the border radius at 3 pixels in the big one, so let's just make it bigger, that sort of thing. But when you have 5 different CSS files and you have one selector that's across all 5 with like different styles, it can become a big pain. And I will show you, again, Sublime Text 2, really awesome. Like for example, I'll just take any one of these random things, region, inner, region, footer. Okay, so if I copy this and I do a find, it's going to find in all the open files. And then, well, I guess that one's not in as many of them. Let me try this one. I'll just type region inner. Okay, so now I get some kind of like readout that says, in this global.css, here it is. In this one over here, well, this one's not a very good one either because I should be more specific. Let me just, why did that one not come up? Oops. Anyway, it's useful because otherwise it's hard to keep track of all these things across different CSS files. And if you add more breakpoints, which you can with Omega, you add another CSS file in there. So instead of just being able to have like one selector or something and then your different styles, it's like it's all spread out. So like Omega has made me much better at CSS because I have to like make it really organized and everything and use just the right words so I can search for everything. So yeah, let's dig in. I wanted to show you, I came up with an interesting idea, which was I wanted to style these blocks so we can look at how to work with them. And so I just created some different styles, literally for the blocks, which you would never do, but it's meant for demonstration. No, I didn't want those. So this is Omega. This is the alpha default, and then okay. So you kind of have to keep them all open, and when you work on them. So now there should be some. Okay, look at this. So let me just clean it up for a sec. In our blocks, I'm going to take out that powered by Drupal. Yes, we all love Drupal, but I'm trying to make it look good right here. And then the other one's a little trickier to get rid of. We have to go to the your appearance settings and go down to, you want to take away the main menu. Now, when you install Delta, which is of course awesome for the layouts, it also comes with Delta blocks, which puts everything into blocks like your main menu, search, all sorts of things just turn into blocks, and you can put them wherever you want. So now, okay, this is sort of looking like what I want it to look like. And I was going to open Safari, I guess, and because I want to do some responsive stuff, and then this will kind of, it will lose its, this gets in the way when you're trying to do responsive stuff. So let me go to my deal and see what it looks like from, I think I have to do a theme, let's do this. That is very strange. Anyway, that's not working, so I'll just do it from here. So basically, I colored these, and I'll show you where I did that. So if I go to this mobile view, you'll see that all these blocks are like a certain color of gray, and then this is actually a different gray, and another bluish gray, I guess. And then just the way I did that is very easy. In my defaults, or I'm sorry, in the global, I just have this region inner background color light slate gray. And that is what you see here. And then in Omega Alpha default, I made it dim gray, which is this. And then in the normal, I just made it cadet blue. I know it's silly. And it's just an example of, at these breakpoints is when you can change your styles. So what I wanted to show you, I wanted to go back a little bit to the layout one, because this is a very important thing in Omega, and it works really well. Let's say that this is, I don't know. Let's say this is your content, and this is your sidebar. I don't know. Anyway, what I'm going to show you is that you can change the source order of these, of regions within one zone. So this is one zone here. Those are the two regions in the zone. And I'm going to make it so that header second shows up first in this view, but it's still second over here. And I've read a lot about Omega, and people don't really talk about this very often, but it's super useful. So we're going back to our Delta, and we're going to go to the header zone, go to the regions. Now, all you have to do in the configuration is say, I want to customize region positioning. That's it. Then all of a sudden, you get these new options here, which is position. See, before we had weight, and now it has position. I know it's like not the best UI, but you just work with it. So then we want header first to show up second, and the header second to show up first. Is that it? Let's try it. Okay, is that what I wanted? Yeah, there it is. So the header second is first in this view and second in that view. So that way, if this has more important content than this, you want to show up first in mobile, and it's also in the source, and so Google picks it up first, and it's arguable whether it helps with SEO or whatever. But it's nice to be able to not have this on top of this in mobile view just because it's to the left of it in a grid view. So there it is. That's a cool trick. And, huh?
Where did you change that in the Delta?
Yeah.
But only for
Exactly, it would only happen on the home page. I'm not that concerned with the other one right now, but yeah, if you wanted that to happen on everything, you're exactly right. You would go to your regular one, because otherwise that header is in all the pages. So yeah, you're correct. And again, you just go to this zone. It's just one checkbox, customize region positioning. Magically.
That's only for at 960. How does it know with,
Tell me what you.
in other words, when you resize it?
I didn't resize it. It's CSS push pull. It pushes it and pulls it. And if you go into your, some sort of dev tool thing, you can see it. See, it added these classes. What it did was it pulled this one 7 to the left, and it pushed the other one 5 to the right. It's pretty awesome. And you can manually do that. You can you can put in those classes or whatever, but it does it for you. Like, watch, if I mess with this, it'll just start looking bad. See, that's pulled. That's only pushed over 4, so we want to push 5. So I mean, technically, you could like overlap stuff and stuff like that, but so it has these push and pull classes built in. And again, you can put it in there manually. Like you go to settings, and and at first I didn't even know you could use that. The whole positioning thing for a while. What I was doing was I would come in here, I would set this as customized region positioning, but then I was like typing it in here manually. I was like push 5 and trying to go back and forth and figure it out. So that's a very powerful feature, especially for if you have content and a sidebar first, right? In a mobile view, you probably want your content to show up before that sidebar, and so then you would just use that to flip them, and it's pretty super easy. Now, past 12. I guess are we almost like out of time over here because there's. Okay, let me show you something that's pretty important, which is. It's easier to build a site. So you build it in your 960 or whatever, and then this is like this like shrunken version of it. But it's like there's this like spot where it doesn't work so well, and a lot of sites deal with it, and they make it look good, but I totally spelled that wrong, didn't I? Wow. Acquia, how do you spell Acquia? ACQ. They should have gotten that domain. Yeah, exactly. Well, it looks like I'm not getting. Oh wait, here it is. So a lot of these big companies, you're using Omega, and here's that 960 grid. There's that narrow one. You can like spot an Omega site from a mile away usually, and then here it goes into that mobile view. So they're using it here, and there's like a little trick that you can use, which is you can put in this address at a website that you suspect is Omega, because no one really ever messes with with the theme, and you can go in there and find that logo and be like, that's an Omega site. And I've done that a bunch of times. I think only like one website has like blocked it in some way, and I was like, you got me. So, okay, so I call this the golden Omega layout, which is you get back to your appearance settings, and instead of using that fixed narrow view, Omega offers a fluid one, and it works. Let me show you. So you turn off the narrow layout. You say, I don't want to use the narrow layout. Instead, I want to use the fluid layout. And you only get one fluid layout, and it already has the media query to be that narrow view. And so, I guess when Jake made this, he knew that this would be wanted, and it's already set there as a default. And what you get with that is, do I need to do a flush cache because of my delta? That's the thing. Once you start working with deltas and stuff, you might have to do some cache. Okay, so here it is. So instead of that jarring kind of like change to the narrow view, now it's like a fluid grid right there. So then you have your mobile, everything is stacked. You have a narrow fluid grid, and then you have your nice 960 pixels. And like, in my experience, this is like the ultimate configuration for Omega without doing all sorts of custom stuff. The problem is sometimes it's a little hard to deal with all your CSS to make it work right in a fluid grid and then all of a sudden add a fixed grid, but it's doable. So, okay. So the layout builder, that CSS structure with the panes of glass, I guess I didn't demonstrate that very well, Let me just show you really fast. So let's say this is my H2 that I have. It's just white, font size 14. Let's say I want to make sure that font is size 18 at the normal view. It's really that simple. You just put it where you want to put it, and then see, now all of a sudden these it's this size as soon as I get to this point. So it's the same with anything. You just at whatever breakpoint it is, that's where you put your new CSS that you want it to change to. So okay. I didn't go into the CSS region hacks because it's not really best practice and I don't have that much time. If you want, I can show you afterwards. And this, of course, this golden layout, I have named it just because it works really well. And you disable the wide view. I've worked on sites where you try to make the wide view work, and it's just like, usually that 960 pixel grid is fine for a desktop computer. So with Omega, it seems like a good strategy. So let's see. Okay, compatibility. It defaults back to the 960 pixels on IE8 and below. It doesn't do any responsive stuff. You can't really load IE style sheets. You have to do conditional classes where you put some conditional stuff in the head or in the HTML part at the top, and then you get special classes for each browser. You can look into that. And then for feature detection, like if you want to use SVGs or background size stuff, Modernizer is the way to go. It has an awesome module. And let's see. So okay, the deal is with Omega is that it's really known as like the place to go for responsive in Drupal. But is it really responsive? Yeah, it's not a here's my mobile site, here's my desktop site or whatever. But you really only have a few breakpoints. You have to do a lot of tweaking and hacking and stuff to make it work. Although if you notice, like with Acquia and stuff like that, hey, it looks good. But I've been to responsive sites where going upwards will change it and stuff like that. Let me see if I can bring it up really fast. I don't know what my connection is like. All right, so this website, I saw it and I was like, wow, this is really awesome. So it can get really big, but they have all sorts of cool stuff where this goes to the bottom, and then if you make it higher or something, then it changes also. See, it has like top and bottom type of responsive stuff, and you really can't do this sort of thing in Omega. So Omega, takes these sensible defaults, like this is what a website is normally like, and then you can work with it and make things look pretty good. So, but it's not truly responsive because I don't know. In a responsive site, truly responsive, you should be able to change anything anywhere you want. It's like this one is you really have to work within the confines here. And it's because it didn't start as a responsive site. It started as a theme. It started as 960 grid, and sort of like put in this interesting system for responsiveness. So it's fun to get started with it, and you have the layout builder and everything. But to get some really powerful responsive stuff, you sort of have to use different tools. And the mobile first philosophy is this idea that before mobile first, everything was like graceful degradation. You put everything you can into the desktop one, and then you kind of like pull things away as you go more mobile. But then it has come around that the better technique is to start with mobile and sort of add features as you get bigger. And Omega does that in its CSS, right? So everything is in the smallest size, and then you add it as you get bigger. But you still have to work from that like full-size grid, and so it's not totally mobile first. But it does what it can with the CSS. Future implications are Omega 3 will be around for a long time. People love it. The layout builder is cool, and as long as Drupal 7 is supported, people are going to be using Omega 3. It is extremely popular. But it's sort of like this. It's like which shoe fits you. I'd probably put on I'd rather have the bigger one, I guess, but you don't get the full responsive experience. So I sort of thought of like a responsive wish list, which is like you want 100% control of everything at every width, not just these special breakpoints, unlimited breakpoints, flexible grids that can change at different breakpoints and stuff like that. Instead of having the CSS over all these different files, to have it all in one, and instead of trying to like hack at it, just have it like work it. So hopefully if I have a few minutes, I can show you this really cool demo of some like awesome tools, which is SAS Compass is like this preprocessor and gem library that gives you all this power straight from just working on CSS. It's really awesome. And Omega 4, which I haven't really mentioned, and I plan to mention it more, pretty much completely scraps what Omega 3 has done, and they sort of stand side by side. It's like Omega 3 is the one with the UI builder, all the stuff that we went over, and Omega 4 is something where you have total control over it, but you have to do it all through code, and it uses SAS Compass. And then I really like this theme Aurora, which is sort of like minimalist. Like Omega always tries to get to do a lot for you. This Aurora theme like does nothing for you except for like take everything away and like to give you like a clean canvas to work on. So hopefully, if it's working right, I made this little demo. It's pretty hideous, but it should give you an idea of what you can do with some of these new tools. And the syntax might look a little scary at first, but it's really not. So where were we? Firefox. So this is just something I was messing with. And if you look at these different breakpoints that are totally arbitrary, the entire grid changes. And this thing just like moves around like wherever you want it to. So at Firefox, I like to go really small. So you can put breakpoints wherever you want. You can change the grid and move things around. And I'll show you just how that works. It's really as simple as this. So in SAS, it looks like CSS, but things are nested, and it has these weird, @include things that look all weird at first, but they're really powerful. Like, for example, this is that sidebar, and this is where it is at its default. And it's so simple. This little 3 and the 1, all that says is that I want it to span 3 columns starting with the first one. If I say 3, 2, there we go. It's in the second one. And of course, it has a live reload, which is awesome also. And so I can say, just how about span 1 column starting with the 4th one? And then there it is. So like this is pretty much like the future. And then like, for example, see how this one is like these like, it's called an asymmetrical grid because you don't need all those lines if you know exactly what you're working with. So you can change your gutter size, and these, like, I know it looks all weird at first, but it makes perfect sense. This is literally, this 5932 is this grid. That's all it is. It's a ratio. This is 5, this is 9, this is 3, this is 2. Let's do 5, 5, 3, 2. And like all the magic happens like in the background. And see, like now these are the same size, and then these are smaller. So you can add as many grids as you want. Let's say, let's go back down to this one. Let's make it, I don't know, 14 grid, 14 columns. There it is. So, like, basically, this is it's called Singularity Grid System and Breakpoint, and you can actually apply any project. You can really apply these to actually, which is what's amazing about it. It's sort of like theme independent. And then up here, I have these breakpoints, and these are more for my style. Like these are like my grids, but these are my styles. So if you notice, do you see? I had it changed to uppercase, but there was no grid change, right? That was just the breakpoint of, I guess, 500 pixels? No, 450 pixels. And you can set them however you want. You just go up here, you just add one to it, name it, give it a breakpoint, and then down here, you include that breakpoint, and then you give it a new style. And it's like, everything's all in one place. Like, we're dealing with all these grids and all these styles just in this one little deal right here. So I highly recommend kind of digging into this. I'm still trying to like wrap my head around it, but it's infinitely flexible. And obviously Omega can't do this. And that's why there are other ways of doing responsive. And these are like super like leading edge tools. Like the guys are like updating it all the time. And that, I do believe, wraps it up. Aurora has like very interesting settings. Aurora is like, yeah, it says like use these modules. Basically, it's like, hey, use this module. It'll like make all these things awesome. Use this module. Like it almost gives you instructions on how to use it. But there's not really settings within Aurora except for, well, you know what? No, it does have a lot of features. It has a Typekit integration where everyone uses Typekit, which is Adobe's like $50 a year, like amazing CDN for awesome fonts, and has that built in. I mean, I would look into it. It has a really good documentation that shows you how to do all the stuff to make it update automatically, and but when you go to the documentation, make sure you're not on like battery power, because for whatever reason, like the guy in a bit of a trolley move has like the most processor heavy website ever. He has this like Aurora going on in the background, and like my fan starts spinning and everything when I go there. But yeah, Aurora is awesome, but Omega 4 is going to have this too. So Omega 4 doesn't have this. This is Singularity, which is, you know, this asymmetric grid where you can change it wherever you want. Omega 4 doesn't have that, but you can put it in there. Like, that's the thing. It's like you can just include it. So I definitely recommend, you know, digging into the SAS Compass stuff a bit. But for now, Omega's fine. I've done like 3 Omega sites in the last like 9 months or something, and it works. People love Omega, but eventually people are going to start saying, hey, why can't I move this like right here? Or, you know, why can't I do this like this other site? And then by then you're going to want to know how to work some of these more advanced responsive themes. So I hope that we all learned something today.